The Esther Project is proud to present Mrs. Lizzie Kaplan, educational consultant for Pages, take us through Perek.
So today's recording is for Megillas Esther, Perek Tes, Pesukim Aleph to Hey. And in today's Pesukim, at the very start of chapter 9, now towards the end of our story, we reach the climax of this incredible narrative. We've just had the decree at the end of the previous Perek, allowing the Jews to now defend themselves. And the decree is then distributed, and there's widespread gladness amongst the Jews. And we now begin Perek Tes, chapter 9, introducing the actual conflict and encounter. V'shem asar chodesh hu chodesh Adar, v'shlosha asar yom bo, asher higia davar hamelech b'daso leheosos, v'yom asher sibru ovei haYehudim lishlot bahem, v'nahapochu, asher yishletu haYehudim hema b'sonehem. And so, on the 13th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, when the king's command and decree were to be executed, the very day on which the enemies of the Jews had expected to get them in their power, the opposite happened, and the Jews got the enemies in their power. The word sibru, we have in Ashrei, Ene cholelecha yisaberu, has an air of expectancy to it, that you're expecting something, you're looking to something with hope. And the enemies had fully expected one outcome, they were fully expecting a certain result, and yet, v'nahapochu, the complete opposite happened. And if we can now, just at this point, take a moment to look back from where we are now in the story and consider all these numerous reversals that have already happened throughout the Megillah. For example, the two letters sent by Haman and Mordechai are identical, except that the names of the attackers and the attacked are reversed. The tree that Haman's prepared for Mordechai is used in the end to hang Haman himself, while the house that Haman builds for himself is given to Mordechai. The ring that the king has removed from his hand originally and given to Haman is then removed and given to Mordechai. And the emotions in the city of Shushan are reversed from shock at the beginning to gladness. And we see these themes and tensions echoed throughout the text to come as this revised decree is then played out. Pasuk base. Nekalu haYehudim ba'areihem b'chol midinos hamelech Achashverosh. Nishlach yad b'mavakshei ra'asam, ve'ish lo amad lifneihem, ki nafal pachtam al kol ha'amim. So throughout the provinces of King Achashverosh, the Jews organized themselves in their cities to attack those who sought their hurt, and no one could withstand them, for the fear of them had fallen upon all the people. Pasuk Gimel. V'chol sorei hamadinos, v'ha chashtar panim, v'ha pachos, v'osei hamelacha, shel hamelech, menasim es haYehudim, ki nafal pachat Mordechai aleihem. Indeed, all the officials of the provinces, the satraps, the governors, the king's stewards, showed deference to the Jews because the fear of Mordechai had fallen upon them. This talks about the scenario in the main walled cities, and Malbim points out the difference between the lay public, referred to in Pasuk Base, and the officers, referred to in Pasuk Gimel. The general public were unsure or uncertain if the original decree still stood, and whether they could indeed still fight them. So they were afraid of the Jews themselves. The fear of the Jews was on them. Yet the officers, who were fully aware that the first decree still applied, and so they weren't afraid of the Jews themselves, they knew they could defend themselves, yet not only did they not oppose, but according to this pasuk, in fact, showed deference to the Jews. And why was this? This was simply because of their fear of Mordechai, and which takes us on to our next pasuk, Pasuk Dalet, ki gadol Mordechai bebeis hamelech, v'shamo holech b'chol hamedinos, ki ha'ish Mordechai holech v'gadol. So for Mordechai was now powerful in the royal palace, and his fame was spreading through all the provinces. The man Mordechai was growing ever more powerful, and this signifies a progression, an ongoing greatness, growing greatness. And the Mechiayan, who's the commentary of the Ramah on Megillas Esther, actually points out that this Mordechai becoming greater with age is yet another case of reversal. Usually with age, power and strength decline, but in this case, Mordechai, as we can see throughout the story, becomes ever greater. And our final pasuk for today, pasuk Hey, Vayaku haYehudim b'chol oiveihem, makas chera v'hereg v'avdan, v'yasuf b'tzonehem kirtzonam. And so the Jews struck their enemies with the sword, slaying and destroying, and they treated their enemies as they pleased. And Melvin draws our attention to the two types of enemy mentioned here. There's the oyev, the overt aggressor, who attacks and is threatening in a direct way, and against whom the Jews defended themselves physically. And there's also a soneh, someone who harbors internal hate, and against them the Jews could still humiliate and intimidate in this great reversal of events. So to conclude the Pesukim for today, Rav Sabato urges us to consider the two halves of the Megillah with a turning point in the center. As he quotes, "The situation described in the second part stands in total contrast to the situation described in the first part. This interpretation of the book makes it necessary for us to clarify the moment when the tide begins to turn. What is the center point of the book, which divides it into the parallel and contrasting parts?" And this is something for us to reflect on today. The general view is that this turning point of Vanahapochu is in chapter 6, when that fateful night when the king's sleep is disturbed. But Rav Lichtenstein suggests that if we think about the character of Esther, that turning point is actually earlier on in chapter 4, when Mordechai offers his challenge to her. This is your moment and take action now. So maybe our thought for today can be a reflection as we get to this point in the narrative of where exactly that turning point takes place and the incredible reversal that we see now.